Michael Jackson dropped the microphone in the middle of his song. And when he started crying on that stage, 80,000 people fell into a deathly silence that still echoes today. The king of pop, the man who commanded crowds like no other, stood frozen under the spotlight. His sequined glove caught the arena lights as he covered his face. The music had stopped. The dancers had stopped. Even the screaming fans had stopped. Because something was happening that nobody had ever seen before. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was a man breaking apart in front of the world. But how did we get to this moment? What happened backstage that led to this chilling silence? And why would Michael Jackson, in the middle of what would become his final song, choose to stop everything? The year was 2009. The venue was London's O2 Arena. And what you're about to hear is the story of the night that changed everything we thought we knew about the king of pop. It started 3 hours before the show. Michael was in his dressing room, going through his usual pre-show routine. The rhinestone jacket laid out perfectly. The single glove placed precisely on the vanity. But tonight felt different. His longtime friend and bodyguard, Bill Whitfield, noticed it immediately. Michael was quieter than usual, he would later recall. He was staring at himself in the mirror, but it wasn't vanity. It was like he was saying goodbye to someone. At 6:47 p.m., a Make-A-Wish coordinator knocked on the dressing room door. She was accompanied by a small boy, maybe 8 years old, bald from chemotherapy, wearing a red Michael Jackson jacket that was 3 sizes too big for his frail frame. The boy's name was Tommy. Stage 4 leukemia. This was supposed to be his last wish before the treatments became too much. His mother had flown from Manchester, spending her life savings for this moment. She stood in the hallway, crying silently, knowing her son had maybe weeks left. Michael looked at Tommy, and saw something that made his famous composure crack. The boy wasn't starstruck. He wasn't excited. He was just tired. The kind of tired that comes from fighting a battle you can't win. But Michael Jackson, in that dressing room, was about to make a decision that would stop his entire show cold. "Can you sing Heal the World?" Tommy asked in a whisper. His voice was barely audible, damaged by the treatments. "My mum says you wrote it for kids like me." Michael knelt down to Tommy's eye level. For a moment, the king of pop disappeared, and there was just Michael, a man who had spent his entire life trying to heal his own childhood through healing others. "Would you like to hear it tonight? On stage?" Michael asked. Tommy's eyes widened. "But I'm too sick. I can't stand that long." Michael made a decision that would change everything. "Then we'll sit down together." The concert began at 8 p.m. sharp. 80,000 fans screamed as Michael appeared in a burst of pyrotechnics. Billie Jean shook the arena. Beat It had the crowd on their feet. But Michael kept looking stage left, where Tommy sat in a wheelchair in the wings, oxygen tank beside him. By the third song, Michael was performing on autopilot. His mind was with that boy. He kept thinking about Tommy's mother in the corridor, how she'd whispered, "This might be the last thing that makes him smile." Then, in the middle of Man in the Mirror, something unprecedented happened. Michael Jackson calmly walked to center stage, raised his hand, and the entire production stopped. The 80,000 voice choir fell silent mid-chorus. The dancers froze. The band stopped playing. Security guards looked at each other in confusion. This wasn't in the rehearsal. This wasn't in the script. Michael walked to the edge of the stage and spoke directly to the audience, his voice carrying across the massive arena without a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight there's someone here who needs to hear this more than any of us need to perform it." He gestured toward the wings. Tommy's wheelchair was slowly pushed into view by 2 stagehands. The little boy looked impossibly small under the massive stage lights. Michael walked over and sat down on the stage floor, cross-legged, next to Tommy's wheelchair. He took the boy's small hand in his gloved one. "This song," Michael said to the crowd, his voice breaking, "was written for every child who needs healing. Tonight, it's for Tommy." What happened next has never been officially recorded, but everyone who was there remembers it the same way. Michael began singing, "Heal the World." Not the produced, choreographed version, but soft and intimate, like a lullaby. His voice cracked on the first verse. By the second verse, tears were streaming down his face. The makeup artist had spent hours perfecting his look, and now mascara traced dark lines down his cheeks. Tommy, this frail 8-year-old fighting for his life, began singing along in his whisper voice. Then something magical happened. One by one, 80,000 people began singing too, but quietly, respectfully, creating the largest lullaby in history. Subscribe and comment now, because what happened next changed everyone's understanding of who Michael Jackson really was as a human being. Michael took off his famous sequined glove and placed it in Tommy's tiny hands. "This is yours now," he whispered. "Every time you feel scared, remember that you're stronger than anything in this world." But Tommy did something that stopped Michael completely. The little boy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a drawing, a stick figure version of Michael Jackson with the words, "Thank you for the music," written in shaky child handwriting. Michael stared at the drawing and completely broke down. This man who had performed for presidents and royalty, who had commanded stages around the world, was sobbing like a child in front of 80,000 people. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't scream. They just watched in perfect silence as their hero became completely, utterly human. But this story's most incredible part was still coming. The part nobody expected. Michael stood up slowly, still holding Tommy's drawing. He walked to the microphone at center stage, and spoke words that would become legendary. "I've spent my whole life trying to heal the world through music. But tonight, this little boy has healed something in me that I didn't even know was broken." He folded the drawing carefully and put it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart. Then he did something no performer had ever done in the history of live music. He asked Tommy if he wanted to sing the last song together. Tommy shook his head. "I can't sing loud enough," he whispered. "Then we'll whisper it together," Michael replied. "And we'll ask everyone else to whisper too." What followed was 80,000 people whispering, "We are the world," along with Michael Jackson and a dying 8-year-old boy. The sound was haunting, like angels singing. Phones and cameras were put away. Nobody moved. Nobody talked. They just listened to the most beautiful, heartbreaking performance in music history. When the song ended, Michael helped Tommy back to his wheelchair. He kissed the boy's forehead and whispered something in his ear that only Tommy heard. The show ended there. Michael Jackson walked off stage without another word, leaving 80,000 people in stunned silence. Tommy passed away 6 weeks later. At his funeral, his mother placed Michael's sequined glove in the casket, along with that crumpled drawing. She said Tommy had slept with both every night until the end. Michael Jackson died 3 weeks after Tommy's funeral. But the story doesn't end there. Because that moment created something that outlived them both. The O2 Arena retired the microphone Michael used that night. It sits in a glass case in the venue's memorial room, with a plaque that reads, "Some voices are too important to be replaced." Every year on the anniversary of that performance, fans gather at the arena and whisper sing, "Heal the World." It's become known as the silent concert. Children who were born after Michael's death come with their parents to experience the quietest, most powerful tribute in music. Tommy's mother, Sarah, speaks at these gatherings. She tells the crowd about how Michael Jackson broke every rule of show business that night, not for applause, not for fame, but for one little boy who needed to feel special before he left this world. "Michael gave Tommy something no medicine could," she says. "He gave him dignity. He gave him importance. He gave him a moment where he wasn't a sick child. He was the most important person in the room." The recording studio where Michael rehearsed for that tour has kept the last song he ever recorded, an unfinished version of "Heal the World," with Tommy's whisper voice barely audible in the background. They say it's the most heartbreaking piece of music ever recorded. Music historians call it the moment Michael Jackson transcended from entertainer to healer. But those who were there know it was simpler than that. It was the moment he chose love over performance, connection over perfection, humanity over stardom. Share this story and subscribe if you believe that sometimes the most powerful moments happen when the music stops and the human being begins. Because this story isn't just about Michael Jackson, it's about the power we all have to heal someone's world, even if it's just for one song, even if it's just with a whisper. The ripple effects of that night extended far beyond anyone could have imagined. 3 days after the concert, Michael's management received over 10,000 emails from fans who had been in attendance. They weren't asking for autographs or memorabilia. They were sharing their own stories of loss, illness, and hope. A woman named Rebecca wrote, "My daughter has been fighting cancer for 2 years. When I saw Michael sit down with Tommy, I realized I'd been so focused on being strong that I forgot to just be present with her pain. That night changed how I love my child." A father from Liverpool shared, "I've been distant from my sick mother for months, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Watching Michael choose vulnerability over performance taught me that sometimes showing up broken is better than not showing up at all." The hospital where Tommy had been treated reported something unprecedented in the weeks following the concert. Dozens of celebrities, actors, musicians, athletes, began making unannounced visits to children's wards. Not for photo opportunities or publicity. Just to sit with kids. To listen. To be present. Michael's security team later revealed that backstage, something extraordinary had happened during intermission. Word of Tommy's story had spread through the crew, and one by one, hardened roadies, sound technicians, and lighting operators began quietly sharing their own experiences with loss. The makeup artist talked about her brother who died young. The guitar tech spoke about his daughter's autism. The stage manager mentioned his father's Alzheimer's. "It was like Tommy opened something in all of us," said sound engineer Marcus Williams. "Michael had always been professional with us, kind but distant. That night, he became one of us. He sat in a circle with the crew and we all just talked. About life. About pain. About how music was supposed to help, but sometimes it felt like we were just making noise to drown out the hurt." Michael's personal physician later revealed that the singer had visited hospitals in secret for years, but after the Tommy incident, he made a decision. "Michael told me he was done hiding his charitable work," Dr. Conrad Murray shared. "He said that night taught him that vulnerability was his greatest strength, not his weakness." The sequined glove that Tommy held in his final weeks became legendary in its own right. Word spread through social media about the dying boy who owned the king of pop's most famous accessory. Children's hospitals around the world began receiving donations of gloves, not expensive ones, just simple white gloves, from fans who wanted to give sick kids their own Michael Jackson glove to hold during treatment. What started as one boy's final wish became a global movement of healing. But perhaps the most remarkable part of this story happened during Michael Jackson's own final days. As he lay dying in his Holmby Hills mansion just 3 weeks after Tommy's funeral, Michael clutched something in his hand. When paramedics arrived, they found him holding a photocopy of Tommy's drawing, the stick figure Michael Jackson with "Thank you for the music," written in shaky letters. His personal assistant, Grace Waramba, later explained, "Michael made copies of that drawing and kept them everywhere, in his cars, his dressing rooms, his bedside table. He said it reminded him why he was put on this earth. Not to be famous, but to heal." Tommy's drawing still hangs in Sarah's living room. Next to it is a photo from that night, Michael Jackson sitting on the floor of the biggest stage in the world, holding hands with her dying son, both of them teaching 80,000 people that sometimes the greatest performances happen in perfect silence. But the frame also holds something else, a letter Michael wrote to Tommy's family after the concert. In his distinctive handwriting it reads, "Thank you for letting me be part of Tommy's light. He taught me that music isn't about the voice you project, it's about the heart you reveal. Your son healed something in me that I never knew was broken. With all my love, Michael." That's the real legacy of the king of pop. Not the moonwalk. Not the hits. Not the fame. It's the night he proved that healing the world starts with healing one person. One child. One moment at a time. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a legend can do is stop being legendary and start being human.